everyone, it's Alo. Welcome back to another recommended reading. I'm sorry this video has taken so long to create, but I have been reading. I have a lot of exciting things I'd like to talk to you about today. So let's jump in. First book that I want to talk about, similarly to how I started off my last recommended reading, is with this author, Liane. She has fast become one of my favorite reads. Big Little Lies was the one I talked about last time that was really good, and I just last night finished this book, 9 Perfect Strangers, which was also excellent. It is 400 and some odd pages long, 449-ish. The last couple pages aren't numbered for some reason, and oh man, it was really good. She just has great character development, interesting plots, things move forward very quickly, and once you really kind of get into the story, it's one of those books that makes you want to keep reading, which is the book we're all always after, right? So this is definitely a strong recommend. There's one particular description in this book that I'm going to mention in the description of this video because I don't want to give anything away, but it was also one of the coolest thoughts, I guess, that I've read in a while as far as a description of something. So I want to share it with the people who either don't plan on reading this book or have already read it. So rather than speaking it out loud, I'll just type it in the description box if you're interested. And aside from that, if you want to know if you'd be interested in this book, it's essentially about a group of 9 people who attend a wellness retreat type situation. They're all from very different walks of life, and this is an account of their very interesting experience at this wellness retreat. It's hard for me to describe a lot more about the book or about the plot because a lot of things are up in the air. And if I say this book is or is not one thing or the other, you'll know some of the mystery will be gone. So I don't want to do that to you. I would just say, I think I've said enough. I think I've said all I can really say about this book. It's just really good, and a lot of very likable characters. And this book also goes back and forth in perspective, which I think she does much more interestingly than a lot of other books that I've read. I think sometimes TV and movies can do a good job with this, the way that she did it in this book, because it's like when you're watching something on the stage. I can't remember what it's called because this is like hearkening to my 3rd grade memories or something, but we went and saw, I think it was The Telltale Heart, Sleepy Hollow, some stuff like that on stage. And there's that whole like theatrical, I forget what it's called, but when the audience knows something that the characters in the story or play don't. I think she does that very well in this because when she hops between person to person, you get that character's opinion of other characters. And then along the way, you can kind of see, you almost get to formulate your own opinion based on everyone else's opinions of a person. Unless they're like very straightforward, like one of the characters is supposed to be very conventionally attractive. So everyone kind of agrees with that. So there's no real room for interpretation. But then with some other characters, it's like one person finds them a little, like they make that person bristle or they make that person uncomfortable, and then somebody else might find them very endearing. So it's kind of up to you how you interpret some of that stuff. And it's also interesting to see kind of, it's very real, like the way that she displays the way that we as humans kind of tend to make assumptions and judgments about each other before we know who that person really is. So you can sometimes look at someone and have very preconceived notions about them. We all know this. And in this book, though, you may have already heard from that character and know that, no, that's not who they are at all. And then that might make you start thinking something about the character who made that preconceived notion. So a lot of cool, like, psychological dynamics as a reader. Definitely recommend 9 Perfect Strangers. I have a couple more Liane Moriarty books that I'm about to read, and I hope that they're as good as the ones that I've read thus far. I will also say that to prep for this video, I wanted to remember where my last recommended reading, like where I was in my reading life at the time, and I remember that Mary Kubica's Don't You Cry was something that I kind of really harped on in the last video, and I stand by everything that I said, though, because I don't even remember what that book was about. It didn't really leave a lasting impression on me plot-wise. So unfortunately, I don't have an update to say, like, yeah, you should definitely read that book. If you want to, go for it. But like I said, I think it did a good job of helping me learn as a writer, but it didn't do much for me as a reader. So one book that did do a lot for me as a reader, Demon Copperhead by Barbara Kingsolver. This book, it's so good. It's 546 pages long. Some of my future books I'm going to show you in this video are not so long, so if you're intimidated by page length, I know these first 2 haven't been a great start, but don't be intimidated. This book will keep you reading for sure. It's one of my clients recommended this book to me after hearing a little bit about my own story, and you guys know a decent chunk of my own story if you are a long-time listener and have listened to some of my more personal videos where I talk kind of more about my own life. So I was not in the foster system or anything, which is a big plot point, I guess, of this book. The main character goes through the foster system, and it really shows, I mean, just the struggle that is, and where that really can put you in life, starting off that way or ending up that way. There are quite a few characters that you get to meet who are fellow foster system kids, and it's crazy. The characters are so great. The story's being told by the main character, who is Demon Copperhead. His name's actually Damon. This isn't giving anything away. And he's a red-haired person. I forget the word actually now that I'm here. I think it's, no, I'm gonna mess it up. Let me see if I can find it really quick. Melungeon. I think it's like M-U-L U-N-G-E-O-N, something like that. I didn't find it, it just came to me when I opened the book. But whatever the case, it's apparently a kind of like a racial group in like the mountains of America, and I believe that they're kind of multiracial in a sense. Like, I think they have some Native, if I remember correctly, like Native American heritage, maybe some African American heritage, and some Caucasian American heritage. It's some kind of mix, but it can create these really cool complexions. Like, the main character has copper colored hair and I believe like really green eyes, but then tan skin. Not like he got a tan, but like he's caramel. So just really cool complexions. I remember I had no idea what that word meant, so I was Googling to try to figure out what is this, and some people were trying to say that like Elvis was a Melungeon. Still don't know how to say it. But I think that if you can't picture what I'm describing, Elvis could be a good start. I don't think he actually is this racial sliver class, but the fact that he had that really dark hair and those light eyes and like olive complexion, that would be a similar look, I guess, but a different variation, obviously, since our main character has red hair or copper colored hair. They have some pictures online and beautiful, I mean, just gorgeous human beings. So that's an interesting, not super relevant to the book, but just something that I learned through this book that I thought was really cool, that you might be interested in studying yourself. And as far as this book goes, like I said, it's following this main character. He's kind of reflecting back and telling the story of his life and how he kind of makes it and doesn't make it through a literal trailer park upbringing, and then, you know, losing all these very important figures in his life, and then kind of having to make his way. And there are very heartbreaking moments that happen, and there are uplifting moments that happen, and it's a wild ride, and you get very invested in the characters. I think especially because they are boys, young boys, and so you feel for them. Just anytime that there's a child who's in harm's way and suffering, you know, yourself on the inside can sometimes relate to that, and you feel it, and you just feel awful for them. But then also you think about the fact that, you know, these aren't fantastical accounts. In a sense, they are. But even just going through what I've been through in my life with certain aspects of my life that I don't love talking about, these things could absolutely happen. Like I can attest that a lot of these things can absolutely and are absolutely happening to kids around the country. So, I mean, even in just like a neglectful home, you can see how some of these situations could come to pass. Kids that just don't have enough supervision, things like that. But oh my god, it's such a good book. It's such a wild ride, and it really goes from like the beginning of this character's life through, I think he's in his 20s when the book ends, maybe older, I don't remember. But highly recommend. It's an Oprah's book club. I don't think I often read Oprah's book club books, but the client who recommended that I read this, I know she is in a book club of her own, and so they must pull from those lists from time to time. So highly recommend this book. You know, she dedicates it for the survivors, and I think that's a really good, fitting dedication. So if you have struggled in your life, if you've had a non-conventional upbringing, if you've been touched by like drugs, alcohol, abuse, prostitution, any of that kind of stuff, this is definitely will hit some strings in a very, it didn't trigger me or anything in that regard. It just, I related to a lot of the stuff in a very real way. So super good book. Let's do something a little lighter. The Woman in Cabin 10. Last video, I think I talked about The Lion Game, which is by the same author, Ruth Ware. And I don't think I had read this one yet. Oh yeah, there's The Lion Game on the back of this. So I don't know which one came out first or anything, but I think I felt similarly. I felt like this book was a little more polished than The Lion Game. I know I had critiqued it a little bit, but generally speaking, I think that this is on the same path. Like if I were to give those books, you know, like in the A range, this would be like at the most like a B, anywhere from like C plus, B minus, B. Not to get super picky, but just because I don't want to recommend things and then you'd be thinking, what the hell is this recommendation? This is a quick read. It's a mystery. I remember the plot. It was good. I don't want to talk it down, but there's definitely a level of like sophistication or something that this is just a different type of book. And honestly, I think this is as good of a book as I'll ever be able to write, and I think that that's a good bar. So no shitting on Ruth. I think she's published multiple books. She's a better writer than I am, obviously. So I don't mean to be hating, just it's like when I read traditional classic literary books, it's like they're just on a different, they're freaks. Like the people who are able to write those books are special and in a very, very particular way. But this, however, is a great, just like interesting, well written, normal ass mystery book. So this one doesn't even have, I guess it does. I was about to say it doesn't have page numbers. That's weird. This one's 340 pages long, but it really didn't feel that long. It was quite fast, as I mentioned. And some of the ends of the chapters are like, like a news article or text messages or something like that. So quicker, pages. From what I remember, I definitely liked the kind of twist, I guess, or there were some unexpected things about the ending of the book and the plot that without those it would have been kind of a boring story, but I think she did a good job making certain elements of it surprising and, or at least unexpected. Not like blow your mind, but again, just like, oh, okay. So definitely recommend. There's nothing bad about it. In that exact same vein, I also read All Good People Here by Ashley Flowers, who, if you like true crime at all, you might know Ashley Flowers. She's the host of Crime Junkie, and they have some other, that's what she looks like if you've seen her before. They have some other podcasts, I think, as well. Crime Junkie is actually not one that I watch, even though I listen to so much true crime, but my friend, fellow massage therapist, Melody, gave me this book, knowing that I really like true crime and stuff, and she listens to Crime Junkie as well, and I believe she reads. I don't know how avidly, but anyway, she gave me this book to read, and it was also, a perfectly good book. It's 309 pages long. I will say this. If you watch a lot of true crime, you'll notice certain like tropes happening, like certain actual cases were coming to mind while I was reading this book. 2 of them, and I don't think this is going to spoil anything because you'll either think of this or you won't. It doesn't really have anything to do with the actual outcome or the plot or whatever, but JonBenet Ramsey and the particular satanic panic murders of these boys. I think it was 2 children. Gosh, I can't remember what state it was in. I keep wanting to say Illinois, but I don't know if that's correct. I think it was 2 or 3 young boys that were in a forest, and these 3 or 4 older boys got pinned as the murderers. Some of you are going to know exactly what I'm talking about. And they ended up, I believe, going to prison, but then later on down the line, I think they're all free at this point, and it's always been kind of suspected that they were not. I think they like Alfred plead, something like that. But the boys were found, or the children were found, like, I think like face down in mud or a stream or something like that, and a couple, or at least one of them, had been very brutalized, and there was suspect that it was one of the kids' dad actually who did it and just got away with it. There was a lot of missteps in that case, but again, neither of those cases actually have anything to do with this book. It was just certain elements of those cases reminded me of certain elements in this book, and I can definitely see how you could pull from, especially if you're somebody who's hosting a true crime podcast and you have all these ideas in your head. It's like you take elements of these different ideas and make them different. That's what this kind of felt like. I wasn't expecting the ending. So she did do a good job of like subverting and also making you wonder throughout the book. Oh, I really think it's this person. And then you're like, wait, I don't know, it could equally be that person, kind of thing. So I think she did a good job. I think, again, this falls in the realm of like something that I aspire to feel like I could achieve writing something like this, whereas I don't feel like I could achieve writing something like David Copperhead, which maybe that's just me being a pessimist, but as a frame of reference for you as a potential reader, this is again a book that's like, it's interesting, you can pick up on it and happily just read through it. There's nothing that's too confusing, and you'll get a good mystery out of it. So, recommend. We'll stay in the true crime for this last one, and then we have 2 other. One's a trilogy and one's a singular book that have nothing to do with anything we've talked about so far. So, this book was so good. And this is about Israel Keyes, who is a real life, well, he's deceased now, but real life American serial killer, and one of the best. And I don't mean that to sound as reverent as it does, but like, I'm gonna be honest for a moment. Sometimes you listen to these stories about these murderers, especially the mass shooters. He's not a mass shooter, but just saying. And sometimes you think, idiots, you know, it's like, you didn't even succeed at doing the dumb, heinous shit that you were trying to do. You're a moron on top of being a murderer and a horrible person and destroying all these lives. You're a moron. This guy is not a fucking moron. He's brilliant. It's incredible the lengths that he went to, the things that he did. I mean, it's sick, don't get me wrong. Like, the main victim that you learn about because she's the one who got him caught, essentially. Oh man, it makes, like, I feel like bile in my throat just thinking about her situation. It's really fucked up. I feel terrible for her family, for her, for everything that happened to her. But you ain't gonna find that in your common killer. Even these guys who killed a lot of people, this dude was on another level, and this is, yeah, about like hunting him down, and you get info from, it's partially done in like an interview style where it's like recounting the actual interviews that happened, but it's also told from like behind the scenes, so you get some information about what was going on between and in the minds of the different agencies that were actually trying to find and prosecute him. So, as you might know, there can be some tension and dissension and trouble between, like, let's say if you have a local law enforcement group that gets on a case, and then the higher ups, whether that's the state or the FBI or whoever, comes in and they're taking it over, there could be a lot of irritability between the groups, and like, why'd you do it this way? Sometimes the local people get in the way where they mess things up. So all of those kind of background things that were going on while they're trying to lock up this incredibly dangerous, cunning individual, you also kind of get that stuff too. And so it's super interesting to get all kind of sides of it at once, except for, of course, Israel's side of it. God, this book is good. This guy, like I said, I don't revere him or respect him, so to speak, but I am in awe of him. You know, he really, out of the box, just a different kind of guy. So if you're interested in, even if you're not interested in true crime, if you're interested in history, if you're interested in any kind of documenting of this type of thing, if that makes sense, this book is fantastic, as is a lot of the coverage of this guy. He fascinates me, obviously. Okay, 2 more. This book's hard to talk about. The Art of Racing in the Rain. I couldn't remember if I had talked about this one before, but I don't think I have. This was also gifted to me by a client, and fuck this guy right here, Garth Stein, because this book made me cry a lot. It's I'm not even gonna be able to get into it very much because of circumstances in my own life at the moment, but it's about a doggy. It's from like the doggy's perspective, basically. Not totally, but you get thoughts of the doggy. And there were elements to this that were very not interesting to me, in terms of a lot of it had to do with, as the title might kind of suggest, racing cars, like NASCAR, like Formula One, just car stuff. That I like cars a lot. I like looking at cars. I'm a car gal in that sense, like they do interest me, but when it comes to actually racing them, I don't care about the tires and the speeds and the, you know, whatever. There were some interesting things in here that I didn't know about how difficult it is to do those races, to perform those races. It really is like a sport. There were interesting elements of that. I would definitely recommend this book to anyone who happens to really love cars and dogs. Like, if you like the racing cars, like Formula One type stuff, and you like cars, this is gonna be your favorite. I mean, dogs. is gonna be like your favorite book on the planet, because it really goes into both. It's a masculine book in that sense. It's a grieving book. The dog does not get hit by a car, if that's crossing your mind. They're just kind of two stories happening in tandem or in parallel. So, oh man, great book. Very sad, but very good. And niche. I also wanted to mention that Barbara Kingsolver did a really great job of writing from the guy's perspective, the boy. Her main character, is obviously a boy, and I never once felt like that boy wouldn't say that or do that or whatever. Like, it was very true to character, I felt like, which I think is another thing that can be really hard to execute, and another thing that I know I have been complaining about in my previous recommended reading, or not books. I was like, not well written from perspective wise. And another one that I feel like I've mentioned, I didn't bring it out here, but it really sucked, was Mrs. Fletcher by Tom Ferrata. Again, some people just don't need to be writing from the perspective of the opposite sex, and he's one of those men. It's like, just don't. It wasn't good. You didn't nail it. Just don't. So, but that one didn't bother me. And the only reason I thought about that is because Garth's book is, like I said, fairly masculine in the way that it reads, which isn't a bad thing. It's just different for me. Okay, what I've left for last is a trilogy. I don't think I talked about this trilogy before in a recommended reading video. Part of me feels like I did, but it could just be because I was telling anyone who would listen how much I liked this series, this trilogy. So, my apologies if I've talked about this in a video before, but this is the trilogy. They are by Margaret Atwood, who you might know. She wrote The Handmaid's Tale, which has been turned into a popular show on Hulu. From what I remember, I haven't actually watched it. But she writes these science fiction books, and I think this is the order 1, 2, 3, if I remember right. But sorry, this is what it is. It's 1, 2, 3 because my client gifted me this book, and I had no idea that it was part of a trilogy, so I read it first. And I did have a feeling like maybe I was missing some stuff, but it wasn't so jarring that I felt like, oh, I'm definitely missing stuff. I just thought, this is an interesting way to write the story. But then at the end, I was like, oh, there's definitely another book at least, because this isn't over. And then I Googled and found out that there are 3. So, and I think I have these in the right order. I think Orcs and Creek is the first one. Oh no, I could be totally wrong. Maybe Mad Adam's the first one. Whatever the fucking case. These are the 3 books in the trilogy, and they're really good. It's a sci-fi world, and I've learned in sci-fi that the general plot, I guess, is kind of I guess what I would call a trope, because I've noticed a similar outline to other things that I've read and watched since. This really got me interested in sci-fi for the first time, I would say. as a reader. I used to watch shows on Sci-Fi Channel. Oh man, I'm trying to think of what some of my favorite ones were called. I can't believe that I can't really remember. One of them, they had to like inhabit Eureka. Eureka was really good. I used to watch that religiously. And there was one with all these little like artifacts or something that were in this warehouse, and I think they used to have to go through a lot to like get these artifacts, but I cannot remember what it was called. Anyway, I've watched and read, not really read, mainly watched some sci-fi in the past, and I do like it. Some of it gets a little too out there for me, or is really boring. Like, I tried to read Dune years ago. So bored. So incredibly bored. I feel like maybe eventually I would have gotten into it. Couldn't get that far. Bored. These were much more interesting. Like I said, the overarching plotline of like someone is trying to fix humanity, essentially. There's a new anime out called Lazarus that is on HBO, and it was really good. It's actually Emmy nominated. It's one season, and I don't know if they'll probably have another season, but at the moment it's one full season is out, and that one had a similar-ish premise. Like, a drug is dispersed and people don't know what the side effects of it are going to be. That same premise is kind of in this, but you also get like the aftermath of what happens after the drug goes into effect, and really compelling, interesting characters. Some things that are just really weird, which I think is part of the charm, I guess, of sci-fi. The second book, the one that I read first, and I don't know if it's because I read it first, but it was my favorite, and I really wanted to live in that world longer, because you're kind of almost in 3 different story arcs across the 3 different books. More than 3, but you know what I mean, like they're like grouped in a way, and they all come together. But I really liked the second one's cast of characters and storylines and everything, and I could have lived in that world for a lot longer. Is there anything else that's important to mention about these books? I don't think so. I don't really want to give anything away. Just be ready for some weird but cool shit, I guess. And if you're not usually a sci-fi person, or if you're new into the kind of foray of sci-fi, this might be a good place to start. You may be interested like I was and enjoy this trilogy like I did. And I do have a few other Margaret Atwood books. I think one's called The Last Testament, which I think might be part of the Handmaid's Tale like series. And I can't remember what the other one is called, but my client also donated those to me, and so I will be reading those and seeing if I like more of her work. She does seem to be a little, and this is coming off of my distant memory, so I could be wrong about this, but I think I got the feeling that she was kind of like a man-hater a little bit. And I don't know if that's because of these books that I felt that way, or if it was just I read something online about her after the fact. But just to throw that out there, I have a pretty firm stance about not learning about artists, whether they are musicians or actors or authors or whatever. I really believe in separating art and artist, so to speak, not to justify any bad crap that people do, but because I don't really care about who they are as a person. For one, I don't know them. For two, like, and this is again my opinion, free to disagree, but for me, sanely making it through my life, I think that everyone's really complicated and everyone's very disappointing. That's just a part of who we are as humans. We can be foul creatures sometimes, and I think sometimes it's the most twisted or interesting or out of the box people who can make some of the coolest art. And so I don't want to deprive myself of enjoying the art or being disappointed by the person. It's like, maybe there's nothing wrong with her, and I'm just using her as an example. Like I said, I don't care about her life or whatever she's doing. I liked these books. That's what I'm here to talk about. But I don't know, it doesn't matter. Just, I know people have become just very testy about, well, you shouldn't watch that movie or read that book or whatever, and I'm aware of that discourse. I just disagree with it fundamentally. And I think that a lot of people, not just artists, but people throughout time who we look up to and stuff, like, probably don't have the, like, as good of a track record as you would think if we really got to know them, because nobody really does. So that's a total side tangent I didn't need to get into, but just was on my mind, thinking about Miss Atwood there. And I think the next book I'm going to read is The Voices Within. I'm really excited for this, and I can't believe all the names on the cover. I guess they all kind of contributed together. I don't know exactly how this is laid out yet. Well, in the contents, it looks like different authors wrote different parts of the book, and you can kind of see when you look from the side, there's these darker lines, and I wonder if that is the art page before the story. So this is the first one, Trials by Jonathan Mayberry. So I wonder if these are the other places where it swaps authors, which is very interesting. I'm super excited. One of them is by Christy Golden, who I know I've talked about before. She's just an incredible author. I cannot wait to read her section. I'm glad that looks like it's one of the bigger ones. And yeah, I think I'm gonna tackle this next because I'm very excited about it. But I've also got a lot of other books on the horizon that I'm excited to read. So, you know, probably in another 6 months to a year, I will have another recommended reading out for you. If you have any books that you'd like for me to read and give my thoughts on, let me know. Aside from that, I will just keep kind of picking and choosing as I go and surprising. So we'll see you guys in my next video, and thank you for watching, and thank you for waiting for me to make this one. I'm sorry that it's been like a